We are. 3, 2, 1.
Hey, Mark Tassler at the NAFB convention in Kansas City, and we are coming at you from there, talking with a man that's been here as long as I have. This is 16 years for me, and Paul DeBriyn, you've been coming for 16 years.
Yeah, I love this.
I'm going to say I've interviewed you a dozen times, maybe more, and great to see you again this year.
Good to see you, Mark.
All right.
Yeah.
Hey, let's talk. Paul is with AgStar. He is the CEO. That's as high as you can get.
Well, chairman of the board,
Okay.
but they won't let me do that because I'm co-op.
This is as high as I can get, and
Yeah.
this is where I want to be because I
Okay.
enjoy talking with you. Let's
Yeah.
talk about a couple of things. One area I'd like to go on would be interest rates.
Sure.
Take us through that.
Okay, we are in sort of an unprecedented period of time in interest rates. And because of the actions of the Federal Reserve, we've never seen actions like they're doing right now. Now, think about interest rates in that the bellwether for how interest rates are set is basically what the Treasury or the U.S. government pays for money. Okay? And so you have money that they buy that's short-term in maturity, like 3 months in nature, and they have money that they pay that is 30 years fixed. And there's everything in between, and that's called the yield curve. Okay. Now, the Federal Reserve basically has two functions. One is to help control unemployment, try to keep it low, and number two is to control inflation. Now, they have a direct lever on the short-term rates, short-term maturity, with the discount rate. And they set the discount rate, and that's basically on variable rate loans for farmers, which are operating loans primarily. They're low. And they say it's going to stay low, on that short-term maturity side until either inflation moves from a present 1.4% to 2.5%, or unemployment goes from 7.3% down to 6.5%. So they're not going to do anything on the short-term variable rate for probably quite a while. You're probably going to see them stay very stable. On the long-term side, they don't have as much of a lever. What they are trying to do indirectly is they're buying $85 billion of mortgage-backed securities and treasuries on a monthly basis. The idea is to put that money into the economy and help keep the longer-term interest rates low. But they don't have direct control over that. And in fact, there's quite a bit of volatility on like a 10-year fixed rate. And if you take a look at the 10-year Treasury over the last 18 months to 2 years, it's been at 1.4 to 1.5% as a low, went up to 3%, came down to 1.6 to 1.7% in April, May. It's now at 2.73% as of yesterday. So there's a lot of volatility in those longer-term rates. And basically, that's being driven by a combination of the fundamentals of the economy getting stronger. Okay? Unemployment, although it went up last week, we are creating jobs. The housing industry has come back. The economy is doing better. And so those fundamentals are having an impact on the longer-term rate, along with whenever the market gets a sense that the Fed is going to pull back on that buying on a monthly basis, they get a little shaky. And so there's a lot of volatility on the long-term side from a rate standpoint. And on the short-term side, it looks like it's going to stay pretty stable between now and 2015.
We saw last week, as you mentioned, the unemployment rate actually ticked up from 7.2 to 7.3, correct?
Yes, sir.
Job creation came in much stronger than what they
Yes.
had expected. So as we look at that, you talked about a couple of things affecting the short term, one being the unemployment rate, the other one being the inflation number. There hasn't been much change in those two areas, even though we've been through a lot of movement and a lot of activity with our economy over the past, say, 5 years. Huge over the past 5 years. Those two things haven't moved much. So you're telling the farmer that the short-term rate, we don't expect much change there. Long-term could be a different story when the Fed scales back on the bond buying and the stimulus.
Right.
We may see some change. So we want to be on guard for the long term.
And if the economy continues to strengthen.
Okay.
If the fundamentals of the economy continue to strengthen, that's going to also put pressure on the longer term rate going up.
Can you give me, please, a legislative update of some kind? We were talking with one of the legislators last week, There was some hope that there would be a farm bill by the end of the year on the president's desk for him to sign. What do you think on that?
I would say it's 50-50.
Okay, still up in the air.
Yep, and we really need to, they do have, the House and the Senate both approved the bill, right? But there are differences in how much they're looking at taking out on nutrition over 10 years. There's a big difference between what the House said they're going to cut back on nutrition versus the Senate. So that's one big difference. The second one is dairy policy or dairy program. Differences between the House and the Senate. The third is just what the safety net would be for agriculture going forward. Now, they can probably get resolved, and this conference committee can do it. They only have 20 days, Congress, between now and year end.
That's not much time.
No, and then on top of that, by the middle of December, based on, after the shutdown, by the middle of December, we're supposed to have an agreement on a budget. Okay. By the middle of January, the continuing resolution to have the government operate goes away, so we could be facing another shutdown. And by the middle of February, the debt ceiling comes into play again. So we got some pretty heavy issues that need to get resolved pretty quickly. And hopefully, there is some talk that maybe the Farm Bill might get thrown in to like a budget bill or something like that, something that's bigger. But there's a lot of work to be done, and weird things happen on January 1. I mean, milk goes to $39 a hundredweight. There's other parity that comes into play. So, whether we get a farm bill, which we haven't seen for quite a while because we've just been extending, or whether we end up with another extension, or whether nothing happens, I don't know for sure, but I give it 50-50 we get a farm bill.
Okay. Ag from a global perspective, let's take a look at the impact of the whole world on agriculture.
Well, clearly, agriculture is a global economy. I mean, where would we be? Where would the grain markets be without exports? 27% of our pork is exported. 15% we're moving to 15% of our dairy being exported. So we are very reliant on what's happening globally overall. In Europe, the quota system is going away in 2015. What that does to supply in the global environment is, we're unsure of. Obviously, what happens in Brazil, as far as the soybean crop, and of course they're on the opposite side of the hemisphere or across the equator, so they're going to be harvesting in March and April, so that's going to have an impact on what happens to soybeans, obviously, overall. We continue to see, increased demand, in Asia, for our agricultural products, which is great. So I think from our standpoint, we think that swine, dairy, grain are well positioned, in the global market right now. We are seeing some strengthening in the dollar. That hurts us.
It makes our products more expensive.
Yes. So, we have to, and that's probably, as the economy continues to get stronger, the dollar's probably going to get stronger too. So that's going to be something to take a look at. But, it's encouraging to see the demand that occurs. Dairy is, very much more reliant on exports than it ever has been. What happens in Oceania and, other parts of the world are important to it. We kind of are the pork producer, for the most part, from a commercial standpoint. On the grain side, we've relied on exports for a long time.
Paul, I thank you for your time. I've used up a bunch of it. I hit you with the big questions, but you're the guy that can get us some of those big answers. Thank you.
I hope so.
Paul DeBriyn, CEO with AgStar from the convention in Kansas City. For Results Radio, Town Square Media, I'm Mark Tassler.